Welcome back to Great Northern Cascade Division in N-Scale. My name's Ian. In this video I go over expanding out the Digitrax DCC system. So I've got Digitrax right the way throughout the layout here. I've got a video I did at the start of the year where I put in the DCS 210 Plus command station. That also is a 5 amp booster, and I added one PM74 which splits out into 4 power subdistricts. And that was enough to get me started. That was enough to do main lines on the upper deck of the layout here. Now that I've got track going down onto the middle deck, I need to get myself more power. So in this video I go through installing the PS-2012E 20 amp power supply. I put in a DB220, which is a dual 5 amp booster, and then off basically each of those 5 amp boosters I put another PM74 on there to break those out into 4 power subdistricts a piece. So I've got all that up and running. I've got all of the middle deck wired in now. I am able to run trains on it. So in this video I want to kind of step through, kind of like I did in the first one, step through just piece by piece what they do, how we connect them up, kind of see how we make those connections, and then, you know, by the end of it you can see a fairly complex now DCC system put together, but by breaking it down into steps, hopefully it's not too overwhelming. Sometimes in model railroading, especially in electrical stuff, especially in DCC, we can make things way too complicated for ourselves. If you slow it down, if you read the manuals, it's not that complicated. It is attainable, and so hopefully in this video you'll start to see how you can piece all this together and how you can end up with, like I say, what's now a fairly complex and a fairly powerful DCC system that's giving us plenty of room for expansion. We could run a ton of different trains. It's all way over engineered. I'll totally admit that right now. There is way more power that's on this layout that's really going to be necessary for the trains that are going to be running on it, but I want to make sure that I don't end up underpowering things and find that, okay, I've now got 4 F units pulling a passenger train, I've got a pair of F units that have then got a freight train going, and then, you know, there's something that's parked up in a passing siding, and, you know, I'm starting to get up there to around 2.5 amps, 3.5 amps if I'm putting sound on, maybe it's even more, even an N scale where you're looking at about 0.025 amps per locomotive. I could very easily get up there because of the size of the layout here. So need to break it down a little bit. Doesn't get into a ton of system design for DCC like that, but hopefully you enjoy this one. Please do let me know what you think. If you do have any questions around Digitrax, I am not the Digitrax expert, but I will do my best to try and answer them. If you got any comments about things that could be done a little bit differently, I'm probably not going to change the way that it's in now because there's very particular reasons why I've done that, unless I've done something completely wrong. But, you know, leave them in the comments in case that it does help out someone else. So thanks for watching this one. Hopefully you enjoy it. Alright, so I have quite the box of Digitrax toys here. I typically don't talk about what vendors that I get stuff from, so I'm not going to call any names here, but thank you. So if we kind of walk over quick to what we currently have Digitrax wise, and this was one of the earlier videos that I did on the channel actually, and still gets a whole bunch of views on the video. It was not one I expected to be pretty popular, but we start out with the DCS 210 Plus. That's my command station, and it also is a 5 amp booster. So coming off the one 5 amp booster, we then go into one PM74 unit. That PM74 unit takes the 5 amps that comes from the booster and gives me 4 power subdistricts. Those power subdistricts are set up for the reversing loop, of which I have an auto reversing module. I then have one power subdistrict that does my Seattle stations. I have one power subdistrict that kind of runs out along around through the Seattle tunnel and goes through into Bay Yard. And then I have another power subdistrict that runs over to far side of Bay over Sound Bay Bridge and then down through Everett and Snohomish. And the idea there is that you want to kind of spread out your power subdistricts so that if you have a train that would derail as it moves through the yard or as it moves through some of the industries in Snohomish and Everett, it's not then going to take out power across the whole layout. You kind of break it down into small areas. Now, within the power subdistricts, I do have some sections of track that also have insulated rail joiners, so I can do block detection. We'll talk about that separately. You can just do block detection based on power subdistrict usage, or you can then break that down, insulated rail joiners, and do detection from that. But this is what started things out. It also then has the DT602D, the duplex radio throttle, wireless radio throttle, but really it's the DCS 210 Plus command station and then one of the PM74s. Now, scale-wise, I need to have a little bit more, and so I have all the different wiring buses that come in on the middle deck, and I have the same for what's coming in from the lower deck. Now, I've got a bunch of the bench work all done. If we kind of peek around on the middle deck, we've got, I don't even know, 70 plus feet of track on the middle deck. All the track's wired into the DCC buses, but I just have the wires coiled up because I can't do anything with them. So here comes the box of Digitrax toys. So DB220 Plus is a dual booster. Now you can configure it depending on if you want to have 3, 5 or 8 amps running N scale. So I'm going to have this running 5 amps. So basically this gives me 2 5 amp boost districts. Off each of the 5 amp boosters will be one PM74. Okay, so 2 5 amp power districts that come off the booster, one power district into a PM74 that splits out into 4 power sub-districts. The other 5 amp booster part will go into another PM74 and another 4 power sub-districts. So that's really not adding complexity too much. 5 amp booster, that's part of that DCS 210 Plus command station, goes into a PM74, splits out into 4 power sub-districts, functionally doing the same thing here. Have 2 of the PS14 power supplies for each of those PM74s. But how do we power the booster? So we power the booster with this. I say all of this. I haven't taken it out of the box and tried this, but we're going to go with the PS-2012E power supply, and from Digitrax. This gives us up to 20 amps worth of power. So in previous discussions where I've talked about lighting, things like that, multiple different circuits down here in the basement, part of the discussion was around lighting. I have somewhere in the region of 900 to 1000 watts worth of lighting. But I also knew that when it came to the Digitrax equipment, I was going to have quite a bit of power draw. So top of my head, the DCS 210 Plus was 70 watts. I could be wrong on that. It's actually probably higher than that. But then I'm pretty sure that this 20 amp booster pulls about 430 to 470 watts. I've then got a bunch of these little power supply units for the PM74s and for a few other things. So that's why there's multiple different circuits involved down here in the basement. But this is kind of a little beast that basically plugs into wall outlet and then gives us enough power to run 2 dual boosters. So right now I have one of the DB220s. That's going to take 10 amps of this 20 amp power, and in the future it's planned that I'll have another DB220 that'll take the other 10 amps from here, and off that second DB220, basically the exact same setup that we have here, be another pair of PM74s powered by a pair of PS14s. It seems like a lot. I don't think it's all that complicated. This does have, and we'll get into it a little bit more, but this does have a wiring harness that comes with it that allows me to power the different boosters that I would put into it. I think the only thing that's a little different is that I'll be running a common ground, I believe, to make sure that I'm basically sharing the same ground signal across the different boosters that will be coming off the same power supply unit. But really it should functionally be plug this into an outlet, use one of these Y harnesses to power the DB220, that dual 5 amp booster, and then connect in PM74 to one of the 5 amp booster zones, and then start to connect in the spools of wires on that middle deck. So that's an overview of what we have going on. What else is in this box? I do have the BD4N which is the block detection modules. I wanted to try these out. Like I said, I've got some amount of block detection that I've kind of been putting in place. I have not broken it down like in the Seattle stations for every single platform to be block detection. I don't care enough to go into that level of detail, but there are areas like going through the Seattle tunnels. It has its own block detection zone. Coming down through into Bay Yard, it has block detection zones, or at least I'm going to have block detection zones. So I want to try these and see. There are other ways that I could do it. There's probably cheaper ways that I could do it. And so one question that people have asked me when they've looked at going down the NCE route and stuff like that, why am I going Digitrax? Digitrax is more expensive. And it can be. It absolutely can be. But Digitrax is somewhat all integrated. So the idea is that if I have a problem with something like this, I reach out to one company, Digitrax, and Digitrax should then be able to help me. Now, I say that as someone who spent 2 decades working in the IT field, not in IT support, and that doesn't always work out. But the idea is that I'm not just buying a random $40 20 amp made in China booster, made in Taiwan, and then I'm trying to hook that up to an SB5 or something from NCE, or Tam Valley Depot make 5 amp boosters, and other third parties make just the 5 amp booster part of it, and run that with NCE and stuff like that. Yes, you can, but there are some amount of advantages in my mind to keeping everything integrated. Everything should all be seamless. It should then give me warranty between the two. If I blow this up because there's something wrong with this, or I wired incorrectly, then hopefully Digitrax will help me out there. They're pretty good on their decoder warranties and stuff like that. So we're going to go through this step by step, kind of like I did in that earlier video. We set up the 210 Plus command station and see if we can figure this out piece by piece, because DCC does confuse some people and does kind of scare some people away, and I feel like within the hobby we make it too complicated. And so I'm going to try and slow this down a little bit. So this might end up being a little bit of a longer video. We'll see, but hopefully at the end of it, you'll feel comfortable if you've watched the first video on the command station and going into a PM74. And then what if you have a big layout, if you want to expand out, can we go ahead and add this in without starting to tear our hair out? So start with this, see if we can get this connected up into this booster, and then take it from there. All right, so the PS-2012E looks fairly straightforward. It has the 3-prong grounded plug that will go into the back of it. We've got power on off switch. We get some kind of idea of how many amps we're drawing. And then we've got basically 2 posts that will connect the Y adapter cable into. We'll look at that in the middle in a minute. And then we have a setting here that basically allows us to set what power draw we're going to do. So in the middle, I already have this set at N. If we look inside El Manual, it's telling us that we can set this to basically different settings for how much amps, how much voltage that we want to have kicked out. And on the top, it's also kind of giving us a warning that, hey, make sure that you're not going to exceed that. So at least for my case, I'm going to set this at the N setting. That should then basically say, okay, that's going to give us 20 amps at 13.8 volts. And so from those 20 amps, it means that we can power 4 5 amp boosters or 2 of the dual 5 amp boosters, which is what I'm going with. This is the Y splitter cable that you will then use, and Digitrax instructions helpfully don't always keep themselves up to date with what equipment that they actually have out on the market. So because I'm using the DB220, most of the stuff is assuming that I'm just using single 5 amp boosters, and so it's saying basically you have 1 pair of posts on the front, and so from this I can then power 2 5 amp boosters. And so if you're going to have 4 5 amp boosters, you need to order another one of these Y cables, and these Y cables are $7 to $10 maybe. They're not that expensive. Reason being is that inside of here it's saying on El Manual that this has 5 amp self-resetting current limiters, and so I'm not entirely sure what is going to happen when I put it into the DB220, because the DB220 is going to be pulling 10 amps basically, and on the DB220 I only have one maximum 16 amp input, even though I'm only feeding it 10. So I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen when I put this in. So I'm going to start out with this. Reason being is that even though I have 2 of the PM74s and then 2 of the PS-14s to power them, I'm actually only going to be running 1 of the PM74s. I just don't know if the DB220 is actually going to pull 10 amps if I don't have anything connected to the other rail. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to try this, and like I say, if you're not running the DB220, if you're just running the standard individual 5 amp boosters, then this would be more than enough. Basically, you would have that go into one 5 amp booster, that go into another 5 amp booster, and then they go, there you go, that away onto the front here. But let's get this connected up. I'm gonna just tap off with wing nuts on one of these, put the other one into the DB220, and then we'll see if it decides to shut itself down, in which case, all right, know that this Y harness isn't gonna work for the DB220, but when I had looked online, I couldn't see anything. Digitrax don't have anything else. I couldn't see any specific literature about using these two together, which either means it will work or it means it's undocumented, and we're gonna have to figure this out as we go. Alright, so I'm going to need a bigger boat, I need a bigger shelf, but in lieu of the internet comments telling me don't do that, you're going to blow it up, I went ahead and did it, and I got 4 beeps on the DB220, and now I've got a blinking power light heartbeat every 3 seconds, which is exactly what El Manuel says I should have when it's in a powered up known good state. Now, scale-wise, I have this set as N, which controls the output voltage. I have this set to run, which is what the manual said to do, and I have this set at its lowest setting of 3 amps right now. I don't have anything connected. I don't have a PM74, I don't have anything else, so the amp meter on the actual PS-2012E is reading 0, kind of what I would expect. I'm not drawing anything. So next step that it says to do, now that we have this in a known good state, is take that lock-on net cable that I conveniently have hanging out from the command station and plug it into the DB220, basically just to get it set up and get them talking and make sure that they're registered. There's buttons that I have to press. So let's connect up that lock-on net cable. Let's get that DT602D throttle turned on, and then let's kind of go through the manual step by step and try and make sense of what it's asking us to do to get this DB220 booster talking into that command station. Alright, so I rapidly lost patience in this. If we look at the manual for connecting the DB220 to a command station, use a known lock-on net cable, done that, plug a throttle in, and it says press the power key and then the N, the minus key on the throttle. Maybe I'm a dummy, don't have that on the DT602. I think that this is designed more for a wired throttle, not for a wireless throttle. Now, looking through the instructions on what it's having you do, it's basically just wanting you to test and make sure that as you send throttle commands, the booster responds accordingly by basically turning on and off track power. So there's not actually any configuration that you're doing, there's no ops code that you have to send to it. I do have network activity, which means that it is connected into the command station. So I think I am going to step ahead to connecting in a piece of test track and seeing if locomotive will run just on a short length of track connected directly into DB220. It should work fine through the throttle. If I need to, I can plug into lock on there, but that should work fine. And the rest of it, you know, if you have one of the older wire throttles, would probably be fine, but it doesn't seem like I'm missing anything. I did a quick search on the Googles, and again, I couldn't find anything about trying to follow these steps with one of them, so I'm going to skip that. Put in a piece of test track, put in a couple of locos, and see if we actually get power going out and make sure that they're running properly. Alright, so wonderfully sketchy and precariously balanced length of test track, and we are going into rail NB, so the first output on the booster, and it should then have just ran. I had a couple of seconds thinking time, because I didn't actually have the status indicators over here indicating that I had track doing anything. I put loco on, didn't do anything, and it's just like, yep, now it works, so I can prove this. Becca's gonna want to prove that it works as well. I'm gonna let him calm down, but now it does work okay, and we can change direction, and we can start to slowly make our way backwards, and I'm going very slowly because I do not want to run off the end of this little length of test track here. So why did it not come on first time for me? Well, because on the wireless throttle, and it's not unique to this one, but what we can do is turn on and off track power. And so you heard the beeping because I turned off track power. Those track status lights, so we've got the two red lights up here, and then the two lights next to indicate our track status. And they went on, loco would not move. Why will a loco not move? Well, if you can hear the clicking, you can see the network activity lights happening. So it was obviously receiving the commands, but it wasn't doing it. And it was because I turn off my track power when I'm not using it, just that I'm walking around the layout. It's not going to cause problems. Turn on the track power. Now we have those orange status lights that showed up. And now we kind of come slowly forward. It will now start to move. So if you go ahead and do this, if you kind of followed some of the previous videos where I set up the command station, I don't know if I talked about turning on and off track power, but it's the power button, and I don't know how well it comes across on these soft keys, but track power off. And if we kind of look carefully up in the top left at those yellow status lights, goes off and you hear it beeping. So now I can work on the layout, and if I'm dumb, I can, lay screwdrivers and stuff across the rails and different cutting tools across the rails. I'm not going to short anything out. And then when I'm ready to start operating again, turn on track power, everything will come live. I can start to move logos around again, and that's now where I've got power. So this basic test makes sure that at least one side of that 5 amp booster works. Because I'm lazy, I only did one length of programming track, so I'm going to swap the outputs onto rails 2A, 2B, which is the other side of the 5 amp booster, and do the same thing. Let's just make sure that that works for us. All right, back in our super sketchy length test track, let's try bringing the locomotive forward a few steps, and let's try reversing it. If it's going to work one direction, it'll work the other, so wonderful. And this is running on the second part of that 5 amp booster. Do be careful, do pay attention to what it is labeled as on the underside. The blocks, I don't know how well it will come across, but it does say 2A and 2B. The manual does also explain it. Kind of important because the common ground is in the middle here. So 1A and 1B obviously make sense. They're the two open ones, but the middle ones, for whatever reason, Digitrax decided to leave that middle one as the common ground. So the actual two outputs for that second part of the booster are not right next to each other on that quick connect block. So just pay attention to that. But again, that's now working. So now I've got both sides of that 5 amp booster working. That's pretty cool. And I'm happy with how the train is working, even though it's on a very precariously balanced test track. I'm not interested. The chair's gonna creak. Yeah, down the bottom, it's still reading nothing. Yeah, it still doesn't read anything. But okay, so that now works. So the next step is then going to be, let's throw in PM74 into one of the outputs. Let's go for 1A and 1B just to keep it simple. Let's throw the PM74 into that, and then let's hook up this length of test track into one of those power sub-districts. And then what we should have is basically this exact same behavior as we have here. But rather than going the test track straight into that 5 amp booster and basically saying, okay, we just have one 5 amp power district, we'll actually end up with the PM74 splitting it out into 4 sub-districts. As long as it works on one, then we know it'll work on the other ones. But let's get PM74 hooked in, make sure that works, and then we can start to put in some of these spools of cable and actually light up those DCC buses on the middle deck, which really is what all of this is actually going to be for. All right, so test track has moved into a marginally more precarious position. Not sure yet. We'll find out. And now we're starting to get a whole stack of Digitrax stuff happening over here. Again, we've been going step by step. Might look complex if you just see that all at once, but hopefully as we're going piece by piece, it's not too bad. So we've added the PM74, and rather than having our test track into 1A and 1B, now we've got some the 14 gauge wire that I use for DCC buses, and this is now coming into the PM74. Now again, kind of like I said about 2A and 2B, and you've actually got common ground in between it. Make sure you're paying attention in the manual and also with what's written on the actual inputs, because if we look at the DB220, we've got white on the left for B and blue on the right for A. So it's actually A and B. When we step up here, it's A, B, left to right. I don't know if you're meant to be looking top down from behind on the DB220, and so we're going left to right, 1A, 1B, 2A, ground, 2B. Whereas here we're expected to look from the front, and so we're going left to right. It's power sub-district 1, 2, 3, 4, and in the middle is where we connect our DCC. But if you're a little OCD and you want to make sure your polarity is correct everywhere around, it's white, blue, or B and A, but up here it's A and B. All right, so with that, we also have a LocoNet cable connected into the PM74. We also have one of those PS-14s connected to power the PM74. And up top, we have a little flashing light that's saying, okay, now what do you want me to do? Now, the instructions are saying that we need to set an ID for this unit. Each PM74 should have its own address set. I already have one PM74, and I am pretty sure that I just left that set as the default of 1. If we then have this, it's going to be set at the default of 1 as well. We can check that on the wireless throttle, but let's just see if we follow the instructions and do what it says. Let's see. So it is saying we need to hold down the ID button for 3 seconds, and we should get some flashing happening. There we go. Now we're flashing backwards and forwards. Now it's saying what I can do is on my throttle, and it shouldn't really matter what throttle you do, so it might be a little bit different, but at least on this, the DT602D, the duplex throttle, I'm going to send a switch command, and I'm going to say 5. And I think that we just say thrown. I don't think it matters what I do. Now the light has stopped flashing over here, which should be indicating that it's now done. And so press and hold the ID button for 3 seconds until we blink, and then release, send a switch command. The switch will now become the base address. And after we've done that, the ID and ops lights will stop blinking. So that's what we have. Now it does also give us a way, if I find the right page on the manual. All right, so as I was reading the instructions, what it also said is you have to actually plug it into LocoNet. Yes, it's the wireless duplex throttle. You have to have it in LocoNet to do this next step, which is basically just to verify those PM74s are set. So come into route edit across the top. It's got, I don't know how well it's going to come across, it's got DS7X route, so we hit that. And again, I don't know how it's going to come across here, but there is, trust me, 2 PM74 devices set. One is SW0001, and then it's got 4 and plus 4 of those subdistricts, and then SW0005. plus 4 for power subdistricts. So that SW5 ops code that we sent did take. It did then program that. What I need to do, again, OCD, but also because this starts to expand, I need to start labeling these. So we have SW0001 plus 4, and then 5 plus 4, so that we can easily identify which one's which, because there's going to be another PM74 that gets added on here, remember. But this at least indicates that this is correct. I did turn track power on. So now we should, in theory, if we back out of all of this, be able to come back up to my super duper precarious track power. Have not tested this. Loco is not actually sitting correctly. The trucks are not on. There we go. And now let's see what actually happens. The Loco does move. And we'll reverse it. I honestly had not tested that. I was a little worried, but I've got the momentum set that it does take a little while before it starts up, but that is moving okay. So that is the test track into Power Sub District 1. It really doesn't matter. I could do 2, 3, 4 if I really wanted to test and I really wanted to spend a bunch of time doing so, but that basically means that we've got the PS-2012E power supply set for N scale, which should give us 20 amps. That's using the Y cable into that DB220. We know that that's running okay, and we now have the PM74 connected. We've got the ops code sent to program the best station to the best unit to 5, and we've got DCC connection to that from the DB220, and we also now have one of the power sub districts lit up. So in real time, that was about an hour or so, and that was, you know, me also then having to make up some local nut cables and stuff like that. So if you read the manuals, it's not that hard. It does look a little bit complicated, and I get that this might be completely new to people, but you know, you can get there. Break it down into small steps and try and figure each part out one by one, and it will now work. So next steps, what I think I'm going to do is see if I've got enough room to get one of these loops of cables stretched down to the PM74, connect that in. That's kind of going to be the real test, because that will then light up track over on the middle deck and make sure that I can actually run trans around like that. And then, you know, try and figure out a little bit more sanity here. It'll need to be a bigger shelf, figure out how I'm going to mount the PM74s now I've got more of them. But yeah, let's see if we can get one of the actual DCC buses from the middle deck, connect it into this PM74, throw a loco on the track, and whoomph, let's see if we can actually start to move around. So real quick before I throw some of those DCC buses on, I said, you know, make up loco net cables. It is starting to get complicated, admittedly. There are starting to get to be a lot of connections over here with loco net cables going all over the place, and they'll end up with another PM74 that needs another loco net cable, and then I'll have another DB220 that will need a loco net cable, and on that other DB220 another 2 PM74s, and I've still got those block detection modules, and they all connect via loco net, which is basically a local network that Digitrax uses for everything to communicate with each other. Now you can buy pre-made cables from Digitrax if that's the way that you want to go. You can also get this LocoNet cable maker kit. I forget how much it is. It's not super duper cheap, but it's also not terribly expensive. But it does mean that you can basically make up LocoNet cables as you go to whatever length you want, and it's really the length that's important. So it isn't something that I bought for this. I bought it when I bought the command station, the first PM74 with a crimper. It includes a cutter on this side to cut to length. It then has 2 blades there that you use to strip the cable, the ends of the cable, and then you use this 6.1 to then actually put in the actual jack. Let's see what the plugs look like. You get a bunch of then the plugs that you connect into. You get a little LocoNet tester, so basically you plug it into, one end goes into an actual LocoNet device like the command station or the booster, and you plug this into the other end of the LocoNet cable that you've made, and it's got LED status lights on the end just to make sure that you got it right. And then you have a pretty long length of cable. How much do you get? Trying to look at this upside down. You can make 12 of them, and it's got 50 feet of cable. So I did have a couple of long runs because I actually have, it's kind of hard to see underneath the layout, but about halfway down that middle peninsula is where I actually have the duplex radio receiver. So it's basically almost pretty much right in the middle of this basement. So I did make a long run for that. But otherwise I'm going to need lots and lots of fairly short LocoNet cables. So I've made mine a little bit longer maybe than they need to be, just because I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to arrange all of this. But that LocoNet cable maker, it's worth it for me because I can quickly make those cables as I need them. And so when I realized, oh, I actually need to plug in the wireless the wireless throttle to be able to check on the switch numbering, program numbering for the PM74s, can easily make those up as you go along. All right, so deep breaths, final steps. I took one of the pairs of DCC buses actually for this north side of the center peninsula. That's what is basically running Skycomish down to index. It'll actually come from Foster River to Skycomish down to index. So we put it into the same outputs, power subdistrict 1 that we had our test track in. We have our track turned back on again. We have the status indicator lights for our track power saying that it is on. There's a reason for that, because I don't have any lights on this middle deck yet, because I did not turn off the lights when I was doing some wiring work and ended up blowing out the little power module. It's like $5. There'll be another one coming soon. But we've now taken our same wonderful test loco, the F7 unit, and we put it on track here in Skycomish, and then runs off. If you want to see more about this, then look at some of the previous videos. There's been a bunch of work going on. But let's see now what happens. Moment of truth. I have not tried this to see what's actually going to happen. And there we go. A little bit of a noisy runner, but that's okay. Someone commented on the video and complained about that. I'm not super concerned about it. What I am concerned about is that, not concerned, what I am excited about. I am concerned that we weren't going to have track power. I am excited that we do. So that now means that if I drop in the wires from the other DCC buses that I have around on that middle deck into that PM74 unit, we will now have that middle deck live. Alright, so I have come back and cleaned this up somewhat, tidied it up, put a strip of plywood on the back wall there to put up those first 3 PM74s. Not sure if 2 additional ones that'll come in the future when I have another DB220 will end up going on there, or they'll mount over there. Kind of depends on how much room I have for the rest of the DCC bus wires that are going to come down. But those future ones that have come down will end up being for things like Interbay Yard, or would be for Wenatchee Yard, or once we get over to Hill Yard and stuff like that. So probably be 2 or 3 new DCC buses at least that I'll need to pull through just to give additional coverage there. So we'll see. They might get mounted on here as well. I kind of made it big enough that they could. Did go ahead and also put in what was called the general return wire. I kind of talked about that, or I might have called it a common ground or a ground return, but its formal title is called the general return. And so the idea there is that if you have different boosters that are running off different power supplies, and you have that general return, and I think it officially said it was to dissipate signals so that you didn't potentially have stray amps or stray voltage that would go back onto the track. I didn't fully understand what it was getting to, but I think it was basically because I've got the PS-2012 here that's powering this dual 5-amp booster, and in the future another 5-amp booster. But then the DCS 210 command station that also provides a 5-amp booster is just running off the power brick there. And so because I'm technically providing 2 different sources of power, then the DCC system just wants to make sure that there's some kind of connection between those 2, so that if there's a little bit of stray voltage somewhere, a little bit of stray current somewhere, that it can kind of figure itself out and not, you know, send it out across the track and potentially damage a locomotive. So I did go ahead and get the other PM74 as well. There's nothing connected into it. None of the DCC bus lines are coming into it, but it is connected into the DB220. That's on 2A and 2B now. And did also go ahead and send the ops code the same way that we did with the other PM74, so that's now an SW0009. So 9, 10, 11, 12 will be the power subdistricts for that. So that's configured. That does show up correctly on the DT602D wireless throttle as well. So I can now correctly see all 3 of those PM74s with their correct programming code assigned to them, and with unique serial numbers, so they're all working okay. So quick recap as to what we've gone through here. I was wanting to show how you can go from the basic DCS 210 plus command station and probably 1 PM74 that you might have, which is what I had here, and looking at how you could go ahead and expand it and add another 5-amp booster and add another PM74. And so how do you then connect them together with that general return wire, connect them together with that loco net connection, go ahead and send the ops code for the PM74 so that they've got 2 different unique addresses and things like that. Really, that's the extent of it for most people. I added a little bit of additional complexity by going with that PS-2012 power supply. And, you know, if you just had one of the DB210s, I think, or the straight regular 5 amp boosters rather than the dual 5 amp boosters like the DB220, you might be able to just use one of the regular power bricks like that. I forget what it is, the exact part number from Digitrax, but the DCS210 doesn't run off a big beefy 20 amp power supply like that. It's just running off that regular power brick there. Yeah, so you wouldn't necessarily need to have this. It does add some complexity. Yes, it is expensive for what it is. Yes, there are generic 20 amp power supplies that you could go ahead and get. Like I said earlier, I was a little bit uncertain about doing that, and I wanted to kind of keep it all within the Digitrax system, and I knew that this would work, and I knew that I just had very simple switches to be able to choose the voltage and the amperage that I wanted to have going out there. So I'm happy with how that works. It's given me basically 2 5 amp boosters now that I've got one wired in through the PM74, the other one, well, the PM74 is ready to roll. There's no program that you have to do on that. It's fairly straightforward. The main thing through all this is read the manuals. Seriously, I mentioned that a couple of times throughout this video. Read the manuals. I see so many YouTube videos, so many forum posts where people have talked about spending hours trying to figure this stuff out, days trying to figure this stuff out. And that's not to say that it's super duper easy and it's straightforward. And yes, again, admittedly, I've got 2 decades of experience in the IT industry, so you know, some of the complexity around electronics and computing and programming is almost second nature to me. But at the same time, the Digitrax manuals do pretty clearly state what's going on. They do show diagrams that call things out. And yes, Digitrax don't really do themselves any favors with things like you've got, you know, the power coming out from the command station or from the boosters, and you know, we've got A for blue, B for white, and you know, it's basically going right to left. And then we come up to the PM74s and it's A, B. Blue is on the left, B is on the right, you know, so they don't do themselves favors with things like that. And if you just plug things in and hope for the best, then that's when you kind of have problems. So slow down, read the manuals, look at the diagrams. It does explain it pretty well. If you're making your own local net cables, use that local net tester. Make sure that the lights come on correctly. Got a good clean cable. Again, just take your time with this stuff, and works pretty well. I'm happy with how this has turned out. Trains are running, no problem. Other than, you know, remembering to turn the track power back on, which caught me out a couple of times. Everything's been pretty flawless with this. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to do the DCC buses into that other PM74 just yet, because I don't need to, and you know, unless I have to have power on the DCC buses, I prefer to leave it, just because I might decide, oh, you know, I'm going to tap into this, whatever, when I start come do some of the track feeders once I get down onto that part and end up shorting something out. So not going to play that game. This should protect me anyway, right? It would be a good test, I suppose. Do the mechanical relays on those PM74s actually, you know, drop the power so that I don't cause too many problems. But otherwise, you know, hopefully this one's been useful. Like I said, the initial video that I did on the DCS210 Plus and the first PM74 and the radio receiver was getting a lot of traffic still almost a year after I did it, and so this would be the next logical step for most people once you've got that first Digitrax system up and running and you're wanting to expand something, or you're just starting out with your layout and you know you're going to need to expand something. So hopefully this helps out a little bit. Again, absolutely not trying to sell anyone on Digitrax. If you're using NCE, if you're using Prodigy, if you're using whatever else, there's a bunch of different systems that are out there. You know, feel free. There's really no right and wrong way to run trains in in some regard. If you're happy with whatever it is that you have, then great. If you're happy with using one of the generic power supplies rather than going with the Digitrax PS-2012 and save some money again, fine. Absolutely your railroad. But hopefully this helps if you are wanting to stay and keep everything within the Digitrax family, and you are wanting to try and understand how you can start to add things and why you would want to start to break it out like this, rather than just saying give me 5 amps and just put it all together on one power sub-district. So thanks for watching this one. Please do like, subscribe, and follow along. If you got any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments. I am absolutely not the Digitrax expert by any means. You know, this is the first time that I'm going ahead and setting all this up, even though I've worked on fairly large club layouts before that have been Digitrax. I've also done it with NCE too. Mentioned that in previous videos. I do have experience with large NCE layouts too, so I'm not biased towards Digitrax, really. I'm not. That's just what I chose to use on this particular layout. But yeah, if you got questions, ask. I will try my best. If you got comments, suggestions, different ways that I could have done something, again, leave it in the comments. There may be a reason why I've gone a certain way, but maybe it'll help out someone else. So if you want to see the middle deck running, I'm going to have another video real soon. I'm just waiting on power supply coming in to put the lights on. All the lights are installed, but I'm not going to do a full running on that middle deck until the lights are installed, but hopefully another 2 or 3 days I'll have a video where those lights are turned on, and I know all the track works. I have actually ran a train from end to end now. It does all work, and hopefully you'll get to see that running pretty soon. So thanks for watching. We'll be back again soon. Bye-bye.